Well, the weather outside can bite me, and this book kinda wants to fight me. The protagonist's named Hero. Let it snow crash, let it snow crash, let it snow crash. Well, the book goes on forever. There's a scary guy in leather, a 15-year-old love interest. No, let it snow crash, let it snow crash, let it snow crash. Well, we've been reading this crap all night. How I hate the way he's always wrong. The plotting is not very tight. Up yours, Neal Stephenson. We found the story abhorrent, but requests came in a torrent. The seeds of dissent have been sown. It's a television I don't even own. Cha-cha-cha.
Hello, welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television, a podcast about bad books. I'm J.W. Friedman.
And I'm Chris Coldlision.
Brr. And we're here to talk, well, before we talk about what we're talking about, something that I thought we should mention, which is pretty awesome, is that we were actually listed in the AV Club Reader's Choice, number 9 out of 10 for Best Podcast. So thank you to everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for those of you who voted. It really means a lot. I know we were both like really over the moon about it.
Yeah.
Just, you know, to be part of making something that ends up on a list with like the Flophouse and the best show is amazing, and we're very grateful.
Yeah, definitely. And so, yeah, we wanted to start out by thanking all of you, all of our listeners, the wonderful members of our web community over at the I Don't Even Own a Television Party Pit, the unfortunately named group on Facebook. But lots of people from there voted and let us know, or let us know in past tense, and we appreciate that. So thanks.
Thank you so much, guys.
But it's the holidays.
And that was your gift to us, and now we've got a gift for you.
Oh boy, do we. So, you know, to speak of the Facebook group, a thing we did a couple weeks ago was that put up a poll that was like, would you rather have us for a holiday episode review a book about a holiday like Christmas or something, or just kind of dip into our most requested of all time? Right. And the answer was pretty unanimous.
Yeah, it was overwhelmingly, please do the book we've been asking you to do over and over again.
So, I don't know why I'm acting like this is a surprise, because you're looking at the title right now in your podcast app, but we're talking about Neal Stephenson's Snow Crash, which is, hands down, the most requested book that we get, like, since I started the show, I think. I haven't been keeping an actual tally, but it exceeds 50 by now, and I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah. So, you know, buckle up. We're going to be walking through a winter blunderland with this oft-requested tale. Is it going to be a silent night? No, it's a podcast. That would be weird.
I don't know.
We'll be talking.
It could be considered artistic.
I'm definitely down for that. So maybe next year we'll do the Silent Night themed one.
It will be 4 minutes and 33 seconds long because we're obnoxious. Anyway, so
and what's not obnoxious? More puns.
That's true. So Snow Crash. Thematically appropriate name for the holidays.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the story doesn't have much to do with holidays at all. And so I guess we should probably tell people what it's about. So are you ready for plot in 60 seconds?
I am as ready as I'm ever going to be.
Okay. Well, here's a song.
Nobody knows if you finish or not. You got 60 seconds to give them the plot. Plot in 60 seconds.
And now that there's a song, it's time to begin.
This book tells the story of hero protagonist, immature late 20s computer programmer and samurai sword carrier, and his new friend YT, a slightly less immature 15-year-old girl who is a highway surfing bike messenger on rollerblades. They end up working for the Mafia, fighting a televangelist who is actually the puppet of a fiber optics monopolist. And his henchman is the world's scariest man, Raven, a giant native supervillain who has magic glass knives and his own personal nuke and a desire to use said nuke on the United States. The monopolist wants to unleash a virus that breaks computers and makes hackers mind control victims, but Hero out-hacks him and saves the world and gets his college girlfriend back. Raven fucks YT, loses a knife fight to the elderly head of the mafia, and then dies. And YT goes back home to be with her mom, to be a little girl again.
Done.
That
No
is
time to spare.
Sort of the story of Snow Crash.
That's the story of Snow Crash, but
Yeah.
I think the devil's in the details with this book because there's a couple things that you left out for sure.
I think I left out almost everything about this book, because this book doesn't really have a plot. It has a collection of set pieces.
Yes.
And some of those set pieces are big action set pieces, like surfing on the highways by harpooning cars on rollerblades.
It's like the old game Skitchin or Road Rage, I think it was called, where you had to hang on to the back of cars on the skateboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that, but
If
in a
you-
novel.
If you ever saw the beginning of Back to the Future and thought, hey, I'd like to read about that for 20 pages at a time, Snow Crash may be the book for you.
This would be better with more angular haircuts, though, for sure.
Yeah, so I missed all the set pieces, the action set pieces, and what you might call the big idea
Yeah.
set pieces.
And I think
Because this is a book about big ideas.
it is, and it's a Neal Stephenson book, and people who listen to the show know that we've mentioned Neal Stephenson quite a few times, and
Yep.
most of his books revolve around some sort of revelatory, quote unquote, big idea. And the big idea in this book involves the concept of, well, it's basically the computer virus in this also exists as a dangerous central nervous system virus in the real world.
Because that's how viruses work.
Yeah. But the reason why is because it's a Sumerian language virus. And then he gets into these crazy theories about how Sumerian culture is like the assembly language of the human computer brain, and it's the basis that all other language is interpreted through. So if you can corrupt that, you can corrupt an individual's understanding of reality, and it's really it's something.
So, put the bong down, college sophomore.
Yeah.
Could you perhaps go a little bit deeper into this, but also, instead of being an annoying internet atheist, could you please present it in a way that implies that you've actually solved religion?
Yes.
As a 20-year-old engineer.
Yes. And I mean, this is the thing about this book, right? And I know a lot of people, I work in computers. I know a lot of people who love this book that work in computers, and it's very obvious why. Because this book fetishizes computer programming to a degree that's indescribable.
This jumped out at me. I think Jay and I had both read this before. I'd actually read it off and on a couple of different times and had forgotten almost everything about it. But two things that jumped out at me that he has done in at least 3 books. Number one is mention explicitly and for praise that someone knows how to program a digital watch.
That's true.
Which is not impressive or interesting.
Unless it's like your grandpa in 1983.
Actually, my grandpa definitely would have known how to program
Yeah.
his digital watch in 1983. I know that because every gift I ever got from him was from Radio Shack.
Digital watches are rarely on the bleeding edge of consumer electronics, I'd say.
Except they're called wearables now.
Oh, shit. That's true.
So he goes to that well a lot, and this is also at least the 3rd book who's with a large section devoted to one character explaining at incredible length to another, no, actually, human beings have always worshipped hackers.
Yes.
Right? So in this one, it's this particular Sumerian god, Enki.
Enki, yes.
The first hacker. In Cryptonomicon, it's Minerva,
Yes.
goddess of wisdom, the first hacker. And it just goes on every fucking book.
Well, I think that the hacker metaphor probably needs to be described a little bit more in detail because it is such a big part of this book that if people don't get this, they're not going to kind of understand how ridiculous this whole thing is.
That's fair.
But the idea here, Enki, who you described, the first hacker, figured out a way to create programming language being the operative word, called me. M-E, yourself. And so the idea...
I prefer to pronounce it meh, which also encapsulates my feelings about most of this book.
But so the idea is that by creating new me, you could rewrite the quote-unquote source code of the human being. And so what's being built on there is the idea that this Sumerian concept of me from Enki is at the base of every brain, and every new language that we learn and ways of interpreting the world are bolted onto this later.
Right.
But this always exists at the core of it. So basically this whole book is kind of like trying to introduce this weird firmware mythos to the human brain, and it's really, really
And I don't want to go too into this, but this is a book about big ideas, capital B, capital I.
Yeah.
Big ideas about human nature, big ideas about language, big ideas about, and later we'll get to some of the political and economic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is every time he's talking about big ideas where I know anything about what he's talking about, he's full of shit in fundamental ways.
That's true.
And like really obvious ways, so he drags in at one point, forgive me guys, I spent a lot of money on this, so
Yeah.
bear with me for 2 seconds. He drags in the name of an actual linguist named Emmenbach, who he died recently, but it was a very highly regarded semanticist, a terrific syntactician who wrote, great introductory texts to the formal study of language. Into this like wild ass ridiculous theory that would get you laughed out of a first year class, partly because he gets things like deep structure wrong. Deep structure is a property of sentences, not of brains. Okay, that doesn't disqualify him. He can use language the way he wants. That's fine. But also his sense of the ways in which the mind and the brain and language interact is preposterous on its face. There are interesting questions about the relationship between your perception and your language. Do you notice things if your language doesn't encode them? Well, maybe arguably differently, but he has no interest in any of that, gets all of it wildly wrong, none of which would matter, except this is like 60 fucking pages of this book.
Yeah.
Is a character explaining it to another character.
Oh, well, once again, I mean, I think we're kind of coming back to this is a Neal Stephenson book, right? And like, I enjoy a lot of Neal Stephenson's writings. This
Right.
book, not so much.
Right.
But like, I would say, even as a fan of his, like a characteristic of most of his books is bullshit solutions to huge problems.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also kind of this Full Sail rating of history where it's like, I'm going to take these historical figures to put them into my novel. Like Cryptonomicon is about like the fun-loving, wacky adventures of Alan Turing at one point,
Yeah.
And that shit gets very problematic for reasons that are now more obvious since people have made movies about him and stuff. But
Right.
he's really presented as kind of this, like he's a character in the story and he exists to help solve this universal riddle.
Yeah.
Like that whole... I forget the name of the trilogy that I started trying to read and gave up on, the Quicksilver one
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever. It's all just fucking a grab bag of names from history just tossed into these narratives
Yeah.
in ways that are supposed to lend a little more credence to the big thoughts happening in the book, but it frequently feels really silly. And I think this book, what highlights that more than anything else is the stuff that surrounds the big ideas is so fucking ridiculous.
Although, in a way, that might be one of the strengths of this book, because the big problem with that Quicksilver trilogy is I don't want to read a series of books positing that Isaac Newton was a wizard.
Yeah.
If those books are also going to be interminably long and deadly self-serious, which those books are.
They are, yeah.
This book, at least, I will say, has a sense of fun about it. It doesn't take itself as seriously as Stevenson's later works would. And I think that is a strength because it's not a very good book and the ideas are dumb, so it shouldn't take itself that seriously.
Yeah.
But maybe we should do some high points, low points. It sounds like we're there.
I think so, yeah. I want to just start out, I guess, on the high end of things, which is to kind of piggyback onto what you were talking about earlier with set pieces and stuff, and that the action in this book is fun. Like, when there's action-packed stuff going on, you're having a good time reading, you're forgetting about all the, like, fucking sophomoric philosophy that is attempting to be crammed down your throat in the other pages,
Right.
and you're just having a good time with, like, crazy ships exploding and
Definitely.
motorcycle chases on the highway and stuff. So that stuff, high point.
Yeah, and I similar to that is, this book does have a lot of energy. It mostly comes out in those set pieces on a sentence to sentence, paragraph to paragraph, page to page level. It goes pretty fast. It moves pretty well. And it's just a young man's book in all senses. If you read this book before you're about 25, you'll probably basically enjoy it. And I cannot recommend this strongly enough. Don't ever try to reread it.
Yeah.
So that would be my high point.
I think we both kind of had that experience with this book for sure, and that like this was something I really enjoyed as a teenager.
Yep.
I actually reread it most recently about a little over a year ago, I'd say, just because it was when the recommendations first started pouring in, and I'm like, I should look at this book again. And it doesn't really hold up under the scrutiny of adulthood for sure.
Yeah, I mean, some of the I don't know, one of the low points that comes with rereading it as a more adult person is hero protagonist.
Yes. Have we mentioned that his name is hero protagonist yet?
And have we mentioned that Stevenson lampshades it, but somebody calls him out, like the 8th time you found his name out as hero protagonist, somebody's like, that's a ridiculous name, and he says, you'll never forget it, wink. But so this is in some ways a coming of age story because he's like this kind of late 20s guy, but he doesn't understand himself. He doesn't understand women. And this is all presented with the kind of faux gravitas that only a 29-year-old man who thinks he's got everything figured out can embody. Mm-hmm. And it's just like the wisdom, quote unquote, in this is just such barstool level nonsense.
Yeah.
So that's a major low point for me.
I guess my big low point with this is just going to be the entire character of YT, which stands for yours truly, it should be mentioned. But
which also gets called out.
Yeah.
Wink.
But they never hesitate to, use it for like cheap humor that her name is Whitey.
Yep.
But she's 15. And throughout this book, she functions as the revolving door love interest of every male character in the story.
Yep.
And there's a lot of discussion about how her posterior looks.
Yep.
And it's uncomfortable. So, yeah, definite low point for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of hard to segue that into a high point, but I'm going to do my damnedest.
Hey, I've read worse.
But yeah, you could say it's actually not that bad a portrait of female sexual agency or something, but I'm not actually interested in entertaining that. So
yeah, neither of us are really qualified to try to tease that out of this book. So we'll leave that to somebody else. If that's your opinion, let us know.
Totally. One thing that we haven't really gotten to is that this is at least a semi-satirical work, and it presents a highly privatized vision of the United States where everything is a business and all businesses are franchises, and even neighborhoods are little businesses. They're little sort of commercial states, commercial entities unto themselves. And that works semi-well, I'd say. Those are the big ideas that actually do kind of work as a parody of privatization and hyperconsumption and stuff. And as a friend of mine pointed out, all Stevenson really had to work with was the 80s.
Yeah.
So this is really not a book about the future. This is a book that came out in about 91, 92. Mm-hmm. It's really a book about the 80s. And read that way, I think it does help it a little bit. So I think that's interesting, and it's kind of... It's like if somebody read DeLillo and tried to rewrite White Noise after like huffing a shitload of paint thinner. So obviously it's not DeLillo, because DeLillo is actually smart and his big ideas are bigger and smarter.
Yeah.
But the bones are there.
I'm just gonna before I go into my high point, I do just want to kind of take small issue with this because I do agree with everything you just said, but I also feel like the allegory that you're talking about here is like the most simple thing to make, and almost to the point where I feel like it's almost not really worthy of praise at this point that someone can write a quote-unquote like kind of dystopian corporate future. Even in the 80s, I feel like that was pretty played out by that point. Right. And I mean, ultimately, I'm thinking of other things I've read for the show that do a good job with that, despite still being horrible. And like even like Ready Player One comes to mind as far as like having that highly corporatized future. And like, I don't know, like to me, I guess I lost my ability to be impressed by that particular story a few years ago. So I am just going to have to be like, hey, disagree. But we're still friends, right?
Damn. I'm going to need a minute. How dare you express an opinion about a book? Don't you know what this podcast is about?
We're always supposed to agree. Our Wonder Twin powers are fading as we speak.
No. I'm going to be a bucket of water the rest of my life. Wonder Twins deep cut.
Wow. Okay. High point. Shit.
Yup.
Fuck. I don't know, man. Like, I'm really having trouble, like, thinking of anything that I, like, super enjoyed in this, beyond just kind of the stuff we already described, like the
Right.
pace and the action-packed nature of it. I guess some of the trips into like the actual cyberspace world, the metaverse, which we haven't talked about here, he gets into detail about how it's designed, and it's definitely heavily influenced by, if not directly, a quote unquote parody of William Gibson's concept of cyberspace.
Right.
But he describes it in a way that's particularly vivid and interesting. And those were the parts of the book I think that I enjoyed the most. Were the parts that kind of took place there.
Yeah, there's an interesting note at the very back of the book where originally, apparently, this project started as a computer-generated graphic novel. And so you can see some of that in some of the descriptions because, it's very geometric, it's very simple 3D, a lot of primary colors, simple shapes, and it's interestingly drawn.
Yeah, I mean, it's what eventually like movies like Lawnmower Man and stuff cribbed heavily from, I think, when they were trying to build things with the limited technology at the time.
May or may not be praise, listeners.
Yeah, my eyebrow was up when I said that. But no, I mean, I love William Gibson, definite guilty pleasure for sure. But I dig his stuff a lot. Neuromancer, I think, is super influential in tons of ways on this book for sure.
Yeah.
But I think in a lot of cases in this book, it feels like homage to Gibson in a way that kind of falls short. I think the metaverse in some ways like actually expands on it in ways that I found really interesting and kind of enriching that particular part of the whole cyberpunk story. So I guess that's my high point. I had a deep pull for that one, but
Yeah. And my last low point is just that almost everything in this book is somewhere in the following Venn diagram. What's better for radio than a description of a Venn diagram? But
so the circle on the left that's
yeah,
blue.
exactly. Bad prose, laboriously explained things / fake insights, and number 3, attempts to parody things.
Yeah.
Virtually everything in this book is one of those 3 things, and most of the things are actually some overlap of them. And oddly, particularly where they overlap is when it gets really, really bad for me. Like, there's some parodies of ads that demonstrate, like, I don't think he's ever seen an ad. There's like a 5-page hip-hop song.
Yeah.
And like, serious question. Like, I'm going to assume a lot of the people who've requested this have read it. Okay, fine. You've read it.
Yes.
Okay. How many hip-hop songs do you think Neal Stephenson had heard before he wrote, quote unquote, wrote this song?
Does that include or not include ones about Fruity Pebbles?
I'm going to allow this.
Yeah. So I agree totally. His ear for scansion is miserable, and it's definitely like reading some real awkward. My name is Jay, and I'm here to say, but
That's
it goes
exactly
on for
how it
5
opens.
pages.
Yeah, it's so long.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree 100%. I guess that's kind of my last low point is something that I alluded to earlier. And this maybe isn't even Neal Stephenson's fault at this point because this book was written so long ago. But does the world really need another thing to tell people that guys who program computers are the coolest fucking dudes and the most important people in the universe, like, at this point? Because I feel like you can't, like, look, like, like in a 360-degree scope in a city without seeing something about nerds rule the world or whatever.
Right.
And look, I do this shit for a living. I'm not in any way like, fuck these nerds or whatever. But, like, as a culture, we need to stop fucking fetishizing computer programming to this degree. It's really weird and, like, super counterproductive.
Right.
So that's where I'm at with this.
Although
Wow.
it's great what the effect it's had, right? I mean, this book has to be a huge influence on the number of pasty white guys putting pictures of themselves with a katana up.
Yeah.
Because that's the protagonist of this book. Except the protagonist of this book is like half Japanese, half black, and described over and over again as being just a Bruce Lee-like specimen of manhood.
There's a disconnect between the people who identify deeply with this book and the way the book describes its protagonist. But we need to take a break. We're running way long.
Okay.
So let's do that, and then
We'll sharpen our katanas and come right back.
Exactly.
Might fights, I swing swords and cut clown. Shit is too swift to bite, you record and write it down. I flow like the blood on a murder scene, like a syringe on some wild out shit to insert a vein. But it was your walk the shop, stolen art, catch a swollen heart from not rolling smart. I put bad pressure on phony whack rhymes to get hurt. Sits plate like zodiac signs and sweatshirt. That's minimum.
Welcome back to I Don't Even Own a Television, a podcast about ex-mafia pizza delivery drivers.
Oh shit, we didn't even talk about that.
No, we didn't, but we probably should.
Let's absolutely set the stage here. Jay, how does this book open?
This book opens with pizza delivery from the mafia,
Oh my god.
starring a katana-wielding badass named hero protagonist.
Now wait. I thought this guy was the world's greatest hacker and also a swordsman of no small repute.
He is, but everyone's got to make them ducats, so...
I would think that being the world's greatest hacker would pay a little better, but
No, not in the new, pardon me, not in the anarcho-capitalist future. So
yeah, it does open with this huge set piece. We've talked about that before, of him delivering a pizza, and it's fun read. I've said before that if you want to know whether or not you want to read this book, read the first page.
yeah.
And you'll know right then whether or not this book is for you.
The first time I read this, I was delivering pizzas for a living, and I remember being like, oh, yeah, this is infinitely relatable.
I wish I were a badass.
I also carried katanas. Not really.
The better for slicing pizzas.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's this good set piece, and it introduces the future world because everything's heavily computerized. Like there's, computer chips in the boxes which tell how long it takes for the pizza to get delivered, and there's
more expensive than the pizza, let's be real.
Yeah, there's some pieces missing there, but it, like I said, it's really just to explain the world. There is a prop for Stephenson to do what he thinks of as his world building.
Yes.
And what I think of as his boring explaining.
Yeah.
But, and then it slowly unfolds that not only is he a pizza delivery man, and pizza delivery is incredibly high-tech and high-stakes thrilling, but that he literally works for the mafia.
It's a matter of life and death.
Because if you don't deliver a pizza in 30 minutes or less for the mafia, you are fucked.
Yeah. So, that happens. Which kind of leads into something I want to talk about. The critical reception of this book was really mixed in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of the people who think positively of it, including like some people who have, posted on our group and like talked to us about it, would make the case that this book is largely satirical. In that it's kind of clowning on cyberpunk, quote unquote, and that it's ultimately a piece of satire. And I really don't think I can agree with that. I think that at times it's very obviously a parody of some of those functions, like there are definitely characters in this and stuff that seem like they're designed to kind of be a wink and nod, kind of William Gibson, Bruce Sterling, like, hey, you remember this. But ultimately, I think as satire is kind of giving this book a little bit more credit than it deserves.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that there are things it's obviously satirizing. It's satirizing, corporate culture and privatization. It's not satirizing science fiction. Like,
no.
The fact that the guy's name is hero protagonist is kind of a winking joke, but that's not a satire of anything.
Yeah.
And he is still the guy who literally in the book saves the world, gets the girl, does equal parts offstage hacking and onstage sword fighting, wins a internet motorcycle race that's straight out of Tron.
I forgot about that part.
Like all this shit happens and it's presented as though you're supposed to be swept up by the excitement and the compellingness of it. Mm-hmm. It's not winking. It's not making a point. It's not doing anything like what a satire would be doing.
Yeah. So I really think that ultimately is kind of an incorrect reading, I guess. Maybe not incorrect, but it's definitely not the way I read this book for sure. And, even approaching it multiple times, the first time around, I was definitely giving this book a lot more credit than I did. And it didn't strike me as satire, despite the fact that, like, at that point in my life, like, I was devouring William Gibson novels, Bruce Sterling novels, like,
Yeah, no, it's just too breathless and excited and convinced of its own insights to be a parody. The only thing it's really parodying is inadvertent in some ways. Like it's inadvertently parodying a hacker who thinks, no, actually, most religions have a hacker representation that is worshipped. Okay,
Yeah.
you've just parodied something, buddy.
Yeah, but that time it wasn't on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing you have parodied is the, sophomore engineering major in the religions of the world class.
Yeah. It's all actually code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After his fourth cup of coffee and second bong rip.
Yeah. So I'm not feeling that interpretation, I guess is probably the best way to put it. I do think that in a lot of ways, like, it's really hard to play something off as satirical when you're simultaneously concerned with the quote-unquote big ideas that we talked about. It's a really difficult line to walk, and there's definitely exceptions. There are people who have done that very well. I think kind of David Foster Wallace is probably a great example of that, or DeLillo, like you mentioned earlier. Right. But it's not something that I think Stephenson really got away with here, if that is what he was going for.
Let me present you just a quick paragraph, Jay. This is nominally dialogue.
Yeah.
The mainline Christian church refused to accept glossolalia, speaking in tongues. They frowned on it for a few centuries and officially purged it at the Council of Constantinople in 381. The glossolalic cult remained on the fringes of the Christian world. The church was willing to accept a little bit of xenoglossia if it helped convert heathens, as in the case of St. Louis Bertrand, who converted thousands of Indians in the 16th century, spreading glossolalia across the continent faster than smallpox. Like, this is dialogue. Yeah. This is not a parody of anything. This is a guy badly solving the problem of how to turn a term paper into a piece of fiction.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it also has that little spreading it faster than smallpox among the Indians. This book is full of little jokes like that. And jokes needs to be in all the scare quotes in the world. And it just reads like a young man, as I've said before, kind of really trying to get your attention. And really going for shock value. Probably the worst one is about how the Japanese discovered they were pacifists after we nuked them twice.
Yeah.
Like, that's awful. The person who says that is an awful person.
Yeah, yeah. That's not cute.
No. And there's a lot of it.
Yeah,
and
there
most
is.
of it is at the expense of the Japanese, oddly.
Yeah, which is strange because this book is also, on the other hand, like completely like obsessed with Japanese culture.
Yeah.
To once again, I mean, you can trace this back. It's definitely a cyberpunk book, and cyberpunk has been kind of Japanophilic since the beginning, if that's actually a word. But he doesn't shy away from any of that. But at the same time, he's very like dismissive, and it's a little strange. It's tonally odd. Speaking of tone, I read right before we started recording, I was reading, this is one of those books that's been in and out of production to become a movie for like over 20 years now. And the first guy who was hired to write it to write for it as a movie actually gave up and said that he just didn't think that it would work because it was quote unquote too tonally all over the place was the quote that I read on Wikipedia. And I think, man, that's very, very accurate. He went on to recommend like this should be a miniseries,
right.
Which I could agree with, but I think tonally all over the place is a very good way to describe this book.
Yeah, I think that's very, very fair. And the little jokes sit cheek to jowl. I mean, like in that bad passage I just read, right? The bad jokes are cheek to jowl with these laborious chunks of undigested term paper.
Yeah.
I keep saying term paper because I want to say Wikipedia, but I need to respect the fact that this book was written in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
There weren't no Wikipedia. So, yeah, like tonally all over the place, and even when the tone is consistent, if it's not an action set piece, it's not good.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that like on one page you're like reading about a swashbuckling pizza delivery driver, and then like maybe 5 pages later you're reading about fucking Sumerian philosophy in this really like ham-fisted, I don't actually understand what I'm writing about way, and then 5 pages later you're reading like some treatise on global economics, and then like 5 pages after that there's a guy with a fucking nuclear powered harpoon like trying to like break ice flows up to like overwhelm an evil seasteader. Like, I don't know. It's like 20 different books. None of them are super good.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a level of craft missing from this book that I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Because I struggled so hard with plot in 60. You all heard it.
Yeah.
It's not clear to me that this book has a plot in the standard sense. almost none of the events are motivated by anything in particular.
Yeah.
Almost nothing resolves in any particular way. A lot of people end up dead, but that seems almost incidental. And I did not realize until this most recent reread, this has another one of Stevenson's most irritating tropes, which is an incredibly small world. So I think he has this reputation as this like builder of big worlds and haver of big ideas.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
But fundamentally, all of his books, I think it's becoming clear, revolve around 4 or 5 characters, and they're usually related. So one of the big reveals in the book is Hero and Raven, who we haven't talked near enough about, but is...
And we need to later.
Yeah. The scariest man in the world, right? And he's got a huge... he's an Aleut, so he's a native guy. He has a huge... that is, he's from the Aleutian Islands. He's got a huge bone to pick with America for very good reasons. That's actually presented pretty well.
Yeah.
And it turns out that his origin story is actually the same as Hero's origin story because their fathers were at the same place at the same time and knew each other.
Yeah.
And he did that in... that's the entire structuring device of Cryptonomicon. He does the same fucking thing in that god-awful Interminable trilogy.
Yeah.
You know, and it just has the result of making the world feel incredibly claustrophobic.
Yeah. I mean, it's Deus Ex Machina to the point where it becomes almost... it's so opaque. Like, you can feel... I'm going to sound really fucking pretentious here, but you could feel the hand of the writer at every turn.
Right, especially because the fact that Hero and Raven had dads who knew each other adds zero resonance. It's just a story they're literally telling each other on CB radios while having a motorcycle race.
Yeah.
And there's just no fucking point.
It's also, I think, let's dovetail here. I think we should talk about Raven a little more.
Let's do it.
Just because...
What about Raven?
What about Raven? No, not a Jewish wrestler. An Aleutian, how do you say it?
I think it's Illusion.
Aleutian. I was trying to add that E in there. But just, yeah, who is portrayed as kind of the most awful kind of noble savage, I would say. He's really a sort of upsetting character in a lot of ways, I felt like. And, you know, without getting too, like, in detail about it, it's like almost all of his motives and stuff are racially based, ethnically based. You know, he has a deep spiritual connection because he's a native person. And, you know, he fights with a fucking nuclear-powered harpoon. There's just a lot of stuff.
No. He doesn't have a nuclear... I think you're...
Oh, sorry. He has a harpoon.
Right, he has a harpoon.
His motorcycle has a nuke in it.
Exactly. His motorcycle has a nuke. He carves his knives out of glass.
Yes.
And this is supposed to be relevant because everybody has TSA-style radar at all times, but it just goes right through it, so it doesn't look like he's armed, but he's totally armed. What?
Wow.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be like really mind-blowing that he's got these like glass knives. Spoiler, they prove his undoing.
Yeah.
Because if you have a bunch of glass knives and somebody blows them all up, then you get cut with your own glass knives. It sounds less clever when I say it that way, doesn't it?
Well, it also took about 10 pages less, so...
Yeah. But yeah, he's supposed to be this... he's presented as this completely implacable figure of evil. Then you sort of find out that he's like straight edge now and is kind of a zealot, like more of a almost... sympathetic terrorist figure, like you understand, he has a clear perception of wrongs he's been done, but again, it's this noble savage thing that doesn't really work. And then there's the whole thing where he literally wines and dines and then has sex with a 15-year-old, which is extremely poorly presented. And there's a word that I don't really like using, but I think it's the only word I know that is appropriate, which is, it's a very long scene, and it's just squicky.
Yeah. I mean, it's really... It's one of those things you keep expecting, like, you're thinking the whole time, okay, I know where this is going. You can move on to the next chapter now. You can just stop this chapter, move on to the next chapter. I know where this is going. At no point does the author decide to, honor that impulse. And in some situations, I guess you might be like, oh, well... he doesn't want to flinch from atrocity, and he wants people to understand this. But it didn't feel like that at all in this case. It just felt like he didn't understand the weight of what was going on the page.
Yeah, and the scene is almost played for laughs because our plucky young heroine, YT, has, as is told to us many times, a dentata in.
Yes.
Which, at one point early, in maybe the most off-putting thing in the book, she's like, I'm not worried, she thought to herself. I've got my dentata in. Like, that is the bad part of being assaulted.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But,
It's just, just a giant misunderstanding of that kind of psychology, and just maybe something Homeboy should have thought about. Am I actually qualified to write about this particular thing?
Yeah.
And if he did, he made the wrong decision. I did not like that part of the book at all.
And the scene where, Raven does have sex with her is explicitly played for laughs.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's bad. It's real bad.
It is. I found the Raven character just really difficult in a lot of ways. Just in the way, like you said, he is presented eventually as a somewhat sympathetic figure, but like at that point, he still has very little of a personal goal, a personal agency. Like so much of what he's doing is motivated purely by ethnicity and race, and it just makes him feel very two-dimensional. And it was
And
one of the low points.
Let's not forget that he is literally beaten in a knife fight, despite being described over and over again as the hugest, most terrifying figure, kills many, many people hand to hand, and then loses a knife fight to a 70-year-old guy with a straight razor.
It's true. But his name wasn't hero protagonist.
That's
so
true.
He had it coming.
Good old Uncle Enzo.
Well, it's probably a good time for us to take a break anyway. So let's do that, and we will come back and do some games. Welcome back to I Don't Even Own Television. This is a podcast where we talk about books. We've been talking about Snow Crash, some weird-ass internet bullshit. I can't keep this up for any longer. I'm sorry.
And it's a special holiday-themed episode, so that's why I've been your little bummer boy singing pa-ra-pa-pum-pum. This book is hella dumb. Pa-ra-pa-pum-pum.
Cool. So now I did a stupid voice and you did a bad pun.
Yes.
So I think we're at equilibrium for a good episode.
Back on track.
So here on I Don't Even Own Television, we don't just like to talk about bad books. We also like to play games about bad books.
Fucking love them.
Can you play a game about something?
Really, aren't all games about what it means to be human?
Let me tell you about ludonarrative dissonance. No, I'm just kidding. All right, anyway, so...
Please do. Can you carve it up and put it in 4 characters' mouths for no good reason for 2 chapters in a row, like Neal Stephenson, celebrity author, would in a book like Snow Crash, The Diamond Age, Cryptonomicon, or any other fucking thing he wrote because he's the explainer-in-chief?
No, I'm not that good. But what I can do is a little game called Russian Roulette.
Russian roulette, Russian roulette, Russian roulette, not actually Russian.
All right, Russian Roulette. We don't have physical copies of this book, so you have to pretend that we're flipping pages, but we're randomizing as best we can, and we're going to get each other to read random paragraphs from this book for your listening entertainment, and hopefully just as a brief exhibit of how batshit crazy most of this stuff is.
Yeah, literally, you flip to anything in here is our claim, and you're going to be like, wait, what?
So I'm ready to go. If you want to tell me I'm flipping pages, let me know when to stop.
Do it.
All right. Oh, this is good. Sumer was a civilization of clay. They made their buildings of it and wrote on it too. Their statues were of gypsum, which dissolves in water. So the buildings and statues have since fallen apart under the elements. But the clay tablets were either baked or else buried in jars. So all of the data that the Sumerians had has survived. Egypt left the legacy of art and architecture. Sumer's legacy is its megabytes.
Yeah, that is so on the nose. It is amazing. That is exactly what reading this fucking book is like.
Yes. So are you ready to flip?
I'm flipping.
Go.
One more thing. There's a lot of shit in the air tonight. A few megatons of topsoil blowing down from Fresno. And so when the laser beam comes on, it is startlingly visible. A tiny geometric line. A million blazing red grains strung on a fiber optic thread, snapping into life instantly between the chopper and YT's chest. It appears to widen into a narrow fan. An acute triangle of red light whose base encompasses all of YT's torso.
Yeah.
That's a lot of words to explain. There was dust in the air, so I could see that somebody was shining a laser pointer at me.
That's totally true. That's, I mean, once again, a good encapsulation of what reading this book is like.
Yeah.
If you want to have someone explain very simple concepts to you over 5-page spans, this is the book for you.
Definitely. And it's that kind of young man's book that we talked about. Like, he's just very excited to be explaining all this to you, and that can carry you through because it's energetic, but gets old in a hurry.
Yeah. So, I guess you have something ready?
I do. I've got... so this book features a lot of linguistics, and one of the core things about human language that we've learned from the science of linguistics is that human language is recursive, Jay. Mm-hmm. So I have a recursive what is your fave for you.
What is your fave? What is your fave? When you're presented with a list of options, what is your fave?
So, first, I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite trope from Snow Crash? Do you have a favorite neologism that gets explained over and over again? Do you have a favorite character who isn't a character? Or do you have a favorite failed parody? So pick one of those.
Ooh, this is like deep. There's layers. Ooh.
Yeah. Recursion, baby.
I just hit my microphone. Let's say character that isn't a character for 500, Alex.
All right. So the idea behind this is that there are a lot of characters that aren't people, but that the narrative really sparks up every time they appear. And you can tell that this is really what Stephenson is interested in talking about. So number one, is your favorite character who isn't a character a binder, which is the crucial unit without which a franchise cannot exist. We hear a lot about binders in this book. Is it two, the suburbs themselves? This is the 80s. Stevenson has been to LA. He's really freaked out about suburbs, man.
Yeah.
Or is it three, the number two, which gets such loving detail for several chapters of this book, where you hear things like, did you know that 256 is instantly recognizable to a hacker because it's a power of 2, which ends several pages later with, and I'm not making this up, the book telling you that 4 is interesting because it's 2 2s.
I'm going to go with the 2s. That's a strong argument. I do know that, yeah, when you're thinking in terms of data, you do know the powers of 2.
Yeah.
That's something that you know. I wouldn't say that's magical, though. That's just kind of how things work.
And I can see I can say that in the actual factual world, stuff like this does pop up. Like, my dad was watching me play The Legend of Zelda once. My dad was a computer programmer himself. And he was like, I just figured out why this map has 255 rooms on it.
Yeah,
You know
exactly.
what I mean? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually kind of cool. Once.
Yeah. You don't need to write a novel about it, for sure. But I feel like we've left some trees unexplored.
We
here.
have. There are some dialogue trees we could go back through.
Yeah, let's maybe reload the saved game.
All right.
Look at this computer metaphor happening here.
So you have two options remaining. Your favorite neologism that gets explained several times, and then your favorite failed parody.
I'm going to go for the favorite neologism that's explained several times, also because I like to think of it as a neologism.
What? And that should be clear. We should be clear. That includes both Neal, as in Neal Stephenson, and jism.
That's true.
Because there is a lot of description of semen in this book.
He loves to do that.
Yeah.
There's one moment in Cryptonomicon that just always haunts me, where there's a scene where one character has some sex, and then immediately it talks about how he had to go and urinate immediately because otherwise the jism would turn into rubber cement in his penis. Sorry, listeners.
Sorry,
but
we read it. You have to hear about it.
That is not how the human body works, and that was really strange.
I would also like to point out that a different character in that same book has an extremely long description of his prostate in that book.
Yeah.
So Neal Stephenson, everybody.
Yeah.
Let's give him a great big hand.
So now here's a neologism.
Yeah.
Try not to gag when you hear it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so is it, and I'm not going to explain any of these unless you really need it.
Okay.
In this way, I trust you more than Neal Stephenson trusts you. Is it Burbaclave, Bimbo Box, Snow Crash, Low Glow, Ramp Turd, or Refuse?
I'm going to say Snow Crash just because I knew what it was before I read the book, so that made me feel smart.
Really? Was it actually a thing?
Basically, yes, like that was a term like in the world of like early Macintosh computing. There was a specific type of crash that would cause your desktop to go all staticky, and that was a snow crash.
No shit.
Yeah, and so like I think he probably, or maybe the name of that came from this book, but either way, like I had associated that with a computer thing before I started reading the book, so I thought that was clever at least.
That is actually super interesting, especially because I assumed he had made it up primarily because, as described, it's basically blowing a computer's mind.
Yeah.
So
I don't think any of that translates to the real world. I just know that there was a particular thing you could do where your TV or your monitor would end up looking like an old TV on static, and that was the snow crash. So.
Right on.
We're old, dude.
Oh.
That was like black and white Macintosh days.
Right. Oh, God.
Please listen to our other podcast about classic computer gaming called The Game Guys.
Oh.
I haven't asked you about Game Guys yet. We'll have to talk about that off the air.
Only if we can do Beep Boop, the all 8-bit sound and music podcast.
Oh, boy.
Hey, we're going to expand our own empire. We'll have a podcast network called Minimum Fun.
Sorry to get your hopes up, everyone. Like 2 or 3 people are like super excited about the podcast where we talk about the Bard's Tale.
We're going to get some really sad mail.
Yeah.
Still waiting, guys. It's behind a paywall. All right. So let's just finish this off. What is your favorite failed parody in this? Because there's a lot of parodies, but again, sometimes when Neal sets out to parody something, it gets pretty clear pretty fast that he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah, the football gets pulled out early.
Yeah. So is it an ad for YT's skateboard, which appears in Thrasher magazine? Is it an ad for Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong, which is one of these franchised quasi-states that you can move into that's distributed in various places across the world? Or is it the following book title parody? How America Was Saved from Communism, Elvis Shot JFK.
Definitely the latter.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is it's the first one, but that's my dramatic reading, so I can't spoil it. But I think the last one there is a pretty good encapsulation of what passes for wit in this book. So.
And this is something we were kind of touching on earlier, like, what is satire? What is parody? Well, one thing it is it requires getting the details right.
Yeah.
And that's only a good book title if you reverse the 2 parts. If you call it Elvis Shot JFK, How America Was Saved from Communism.
That's true.
That's interesting. If you go the other order, it doesn't make any sense and doesn't work.
Yeah, then it's just 2 different titles after each other.
Yeah, this is a trivial edit. Come on. And don't tell me, oh, it's actually supposed to be a parody because it's an apt. Fuck off with that.
Yeah, this could have been funny, but it wasn't. That's a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So
it sounds like we're about ready for dramatic readings now that we've delved into the deepest. What is your
I'm going to put a lot of echo and reverb on that last sentence of yours, so I had to pause there because we're talking about recursion. So.
What's creepy is that's exactly how I was imagining
Oh,
it in
good.
my head. Get out of my head, you hacker. Jay's really hyper-hacked my meatware.
Gross.
Yeah. You're telling me.
All right, so here comes some dramatic readings.
Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound important. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you.
In dramatic readings, we're going to read parts of a book to you and make them sound so important, as stated in the song. Should I go first, or would you?
Why don't you go first?
Okay. So the part I'm going to read here is an advertisement, a surprisingly long advertisement for the Radx Mark IV Smart Wheels. They're just some cool-ass wheels for your future skateboard. So here we go. Chiseled spam is what you'll see in the mirror if you surf on a weak plank with a dumb fixed wheel and interface with a muffler, retread, snow turd, roadkill, drive shaft, railroad tie, or unconscious pedestrian. If you think this is unlikely, you've been surfing too many ghost malls. All these obstacles and more were recently observed on a 1-mile stretch of the New Jersey Turnpike. Any surfer who tried to groove that vard on a stock plank would have been sneezing brains. Don't listen to so-called purists who claim any obstacle can be jumped. Professional couriers know if you pooned a vehicle moving fast enough for fun and profit, your reaction time is cut to tenths of a second. Even less if you're way spooled. Buy a set of Radx Mark II Smart Wheels. It's cheaper than a total face retread and a lot more fun. Smart Wheels use sonar, laser range finding, and millimeter wave radar to identify mufflers and other debris before you can get honed about them. Don't get Midas-sized. Upgrade today!
Wow. That
Sorry.
the problem is, you just made that sound so much cooler than it was on the page.
Well, I feel like when he was writing this, and this may be a case of me getting dates wrong again, and if I do, someone's going to write in. But I feel like he had just watched RoboCop.
Yeah. All right.
And there's a lot of like, I'd buy that for $1 going on. So
absolutely.
Anyway, that was the vibe I was trying to present here.
I do want to say that for any kind of advertisement, that is more copy than has literally ever appeared in any advertisement ever.
Well,
in any format.
On our next break, I'll tell you about our Squarespace ads. But
yeah, but I thought we were like totally freestyling those, man.
All right. Anyway. It's a joke, folks. It's a joke.
Yeah. Whew. All right. So let's take a second, clear the palate, and let's rock it from the exciting world of the professional skateboard rollerblader person into a chilling depiction of America as seen by the eyes of a smart man.
Tonally all over the place.
When a businessman from New Jersey goes to Dubuque, he knows he can walk into a McDonald's and no one will stare at him. He can order without having to look at the menu, and the food will always taste the same. McDonald's is home, condensed into a 3-ring binder and Xeroxed. No surprises is the motto of the franchise ghetto. Its good housekeeping seal subliminally blazoned on every sign and logo that make up the curves and grids of light that outline the basin. The people of America who live in the world's most surprising and terrible country. Take comfort in that motto. Follow the low glow outward to where the growth is enfolded into the valleys and the canyons, and you find the land of the refugees. They have fled from the true America, the America of atomic bombs, scalpings, hip-hop, chaos theory, cement overshoes, snake handlers, spree killers, spacewalks, buffalo jumps, drive-bys, cruise missiles, Sherman's March, gridlock motorcycle gangs, and bungee jumping. They have parallel parked their bimbo boxes in identical computer-designed burb-clave street patterns and secreted themselves in symmetrical sheetrock shitholes with vinyl floors and ill-fitting woodwork and no sidewalks. Fast house farms out in the low-glow wilderness. A culture medium for a medium culture. The only ones left in the city are street people feeding off debris. Immigrants thrown out like shrapnel from the destruction of the Asian powers. Young bohos and the techno-media priesthood of Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong. Young, smart people like Day Fiveid and hero who take the risk of living in the city because they like stimulation and they know they can handle it.
Let's hear it for the future of gentrification.
Yeah. Wow. You'll notice a little stumble there at the end because I genuinely don't know how the fuck I'm supposed to pronounce DA5ID.
I think it would be just David. I was in a band in high school with a guy whose name was Fred, but he spelled it with a 4. 4RED. He had some very artistic thoughts, obviously.
Defivid.
Yeah.
I'm going with Defivid. We're fighting again.
That's like 7-7
yeah.
my favorite movie.
or the best TV show of all time, Numthers.
Numbers.
I'm sorry, I could not pronounce it that
I was still
way.
so pissed when they made the new Transformers movie and it wasn't called Transformers. It pissed me off so much.
I mean, not only would that have been obviously a great title, by not titling it that, they just completely threw away the tie-in potential of Transformers fourth meal at Taco Bell.
That's totally true.
Right?
I think we need to go to break right now before we lose every new listener we've gained.
Thanks for your votes, everybody.
We'll be right back.
He's the new sensation in the nation, Pizza Boy USA. He's the flying saucer innovation, Pizza Boy USA. He's getting ready now, listen to that crowd. He's a Pizza Boy USA.
I'm not going to say the name of the show because you already know what you're listening to, but we're back.
What?
Things have gotten a little loosey-goosey around here.
Oh my god. Yeah, obviously, rocketing to the top of the charts has also rocketed to our heads.
Maybe just reading this book has made me just...
A little punchy.
Yeah, I think that's possible too. So last segment of the show is generally when we start out by recommending things that we found better than the thing that we just talked about. And so in this case, I have two. One of them is really short, so I'm going to go first.
Do it.
And it's just kind of on the concept of language containing mimetic viruses and stuff. Is a movie, and I think you can even get it on Netflix still, called Pontypool. It's a very small movie. It takes place in one room. It's basically about a radio broadcaster and a language virus that begins infecting the town he's in. And it's very intense. It's a horror movie that has almost no gore and really no special effects, with one small exception. Really good movie. So I'd recommend that if you kind of like the idea of language as a destructive force. It's really neat.
And if you don't, you should listen to us like spit hot fire.
That's true. My language is a destructive force. I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, I'll destroy mics, I'll destroy minds, my verbal 9, and my
true.
Linguistic Uzi.
I don't even own a television. Your lyrical, scientifical, verbal whirlwind.
Which brings me, in not at all appropriate fashion, to my recommendation.
All right.
Which is even shorter than yours. It's a recent article by Rebecca Solnit called Men Explain Lolita to Me.
Yeah.
And it's made the rounds. I think Jay and I actually hit upon it right after it was published independently.
Yeah.
But it's well worth your time. And especially I think it's appropriate when we're talking about Snow Crash, because there are a couple of paragraphs in there that really describe what it's like to read books a lot like this one, and read mostly books a lot like this one as a woman. So a lot of the things about this book were kind of brought into stark relief by having read that. So couldn't recommend that more highly. It's quick. You know, it's literally an article, so look it up.
Yeah, like I think one of the main ideas of it is that, like, in a lot of ways, books can be a tool for empathy because they allow you to kind of inhabit the minds of someone you aren't.
Right.
And that if you're spending all this time reading books that just celebrate, I think she called it like the glorious temple of the boring self or something like that. I forget the exact wording, but it was so on point. Then like you're not exercising that muscle. Right. And, you're not really experiencing all you could be with reading. And I thought that was a really cool way to look at things.
Exactly. And it's also a pretty good corrective to books that just pander to you by presenting an idealized version of yourself to you over and over again.
Exactly.
Hi, Ernest Klein.
Yeah. So my book recommendation this week has nothing to do with anything we talked about, but I just think it's fucking amazing so far. It's a compendium of weird fiction throughout the ages called The Weird, and it's by Jeff VanderMeer and his wife, Anne VanderMeer. They are the anthologists, I guess you'd say, the curators. They've compiled this book of weird fiction. Like, some of it dates back to the mid-1800s, but a lot of it isn't from authors that you traditionally associate with that tag. You know, like, there's Lovecraft in it. You know, there's Bierce. There's a couple of those type of guys. But then there's also a lot of stuff that was not, you know, translated into English until very recently. There was like some Japanese stuff that's very weird about the unseen. Whoa. And, you know, Jean Ray, who was a Belgian author who until recently a lot of his short stories haven't been translated, and they're very creepy and spooky. It's just an awesome anthology. It's like 1,600 pages long, and I'm just really enjoying reading it. I'm only about halfway through, but each piece is introduced with a little blurb that gives it historical context, and it's definitely just one of the most well-researched anthologies I've ever read, and just super entertaining if you like scary stories. So can't recommend that enough. The Weird. I believe the full title, let me pull it up here because it has one of them colon titles. It would be... So
it's like The Weird, how JFK shot Elvis and saved America
That's
from
exactly
communism.
It. You know how hard it is to find just the full title when you're looking at a reading app? Here we go. The Weird, a compendium of strange and dark stories, edited by Anne and Jeff VanderMeer. So yeah, check that out.
Very cool. Let's maybe got some. Do we have time for some letters, Jay?
I think we have time for a few letters.
I mean, I don't know, because we got a lot of letters, though.
We do.
A, letter B, letter C, letter D, letter E, letter M, letter G, letter. Got a lot of letters.
Yeah.
All right. So as mentioned, we got a lot of letters. So let's get right to it. The first one. This came in a couple different ways in a couple different channels. We need to address a controversy from the last episode. There was a moment where the book was describing an ever-shifting musical pastiche. So a thing that was like lurching from genre to genre.
Yes.
And I said, "What's this? Botch?"
That's true, you did.
And several people thought I said, "What's this? Bach?" So let me be clear here.
Yes.
I was describing not particularly well-known or important, but important to me.
To me, they're well-known. I mean, I'm like, Botch. Who doesn't know Botch? South Carolina's finest.
A hardcore band from, late 90s, early 2000s. Notable for lots of parts in their songs and some of the best song titles any band has ever had. That was what I was talking about. I was not talking about Bach, who does not lurch from genre to genre in pastiche-like fashion. Things like the Well-Tempered Clavier people, the Goldberg variations, these are meticulously, rigorously worked out variations on a tightly defined theme. Give me some credit.
But have you ever heard his collaboration with Mike Patton? Because that shit is crazy.
Mr. Bachel?
Yeah. Oh, God.
Sounds like a debacle to me.
Jeez. No, I do think that's worth addressing. We were not mispronouncing the name of a composer. We were just making a musical reference that may have been too obscure for our own good.
That is very true, and I would like to take full responsibility for that. I just think of little else than Botch. Anyway.
Oh, you know what? People who don't know Botch may know. Current, or maybe not current, because I'm old. Minus the Bear, if you've heard of Minus the Bear, some of those guys used to be in Botch, so there you go.
I called them Minus the Songs, but that's just my hot take.
Damn, zing, rack 'em. All right, we need to do another podcast where all we do is just make snarky jokes about like super obscure 90s post-hardcore bands. Like, that motherfucker probably listens to 7-Story Mountain. Kerosene 450 what? All right. I'll stop. Everyone is turning off this show. Right?
Sounds like a real Rorschach project.
Oh, God.
Anyway. Okay, so then I'm going to excerpt this heavily. But Gil, no last name, wrote in to ask us to recommend, quote, podcasts to make me laugh without turning off empathy, which I think is a really interesting point, because there's a lot of funny podcasts, but a lot of them also take a lot of liberties and are not above kind of a cheap laugh.
Mm-hmm. I think that definitely, like, I mean, even if you want to go to the point where, like, I think, sometimes what we do, ultimately, we're making fun of things,
Yeah.
So I think even if you want to go and find comedy, like, outside of that, I think definitely Super Ego is a great place to check out. It's a lot of improv comedy done, like, heavily in character by masters of the craft. And if you aren't already listening to it, then you should check it out. If you are, you're like, this is the most obvious recommendation ever. But that one is really good. And then kind of just on a smaller note, I guess, they seem to have stopped after 6 episodes, but Starlee Klein had a podcast called The Mystery Show that I thought was really, really great. Like, the premise of it was that she solves mysteries, but they're kind of everyday mysteries. So, like, one episode that really stuck out to me was they found this crazy complicated belt buckle at a Goodwill that was, like, had moving pieces with a toaster, with toast that popped up and down, and a fork and knife, and like it had a guy's name on it. And so they figured this must have meant something to someone at some point in time. So we're going to solve the mystery of who this belonged to. And they actually, over the course of an hour, they track this person down, and it's this really cool emotional story, but it's really funny because it's just such a kind of absurd concept at its core. So I'd really recommend that, almost like on kind of the opposite of making fun of things humor. I think that that's a really funny podcast that's kind of funny because of the way it celebrates a lot of these kind of absurd, like, moments in life and stuff. So that was me getting serious, but check that out, Mystery Show. I really hope it's not gone forever, but the 6 episodes that do exist are really good episodes. So
it's awesome. Okay, let me cue the next one up here, which is from...
Well, what about you, man?
Oh, I would say, I mean, yeah, I would say kind of my go-tos are not devoid of empathy at all, which I listen to a lot of public radio, so don't mock me. But in the podcast vein, very much, I think the Flophouse, I think it's especially interesting because they've actually kind of come a long way. They used to make a type of joke that they really don't make anymore. And I think that's interesting. And obviously for me, the best show is very, very empathetic without sacrificing deep grumpiness. And that works for me on a lot of levels.
I mean, obviously, once again, that kind of falls in the category. If you don't listen to it, you probably should. If you do, you're like, wow, this is so obvious.
Yeah, I mean,
masters of the craft for many years running. So
yeah, welcome to I don't even own a barrel to put my fish in.
Yeah, we love everybody, is what we're basically saying. One more. Worst bestsellers. Awesome. I just started listening to it recently. They're also a book podcast. Very, very funny stuff. The hosts are amazingly funny. They do a really good job of kind of like taking things apart in an intelligent way that once again isn't devoid of empathy and will make you laugh. So yeah, check that out too.
Awesome. Although I do want to reiterate, I said this on the Facebook group a while ago. I would really, frankly, prefer if you people did not actually listen to other podcasts.
That's true. I don't know what I'm doing here. It's not our job to put anyone over. I'm the champ.
As Enki the hacker god said, "Thou shalt have no other podcasts before me."
Brother, I am the show.
All right, so let's go to a letter from Franklin, no last name, called, and this is a great way to get your letter on the podcast, Ass Everywhere.
Ants Everywhere by Bug Frida. Now I'm doing your bad puns.
Oh, God.
I'll probably edit that out. Anyway.
Man, bad puns are a virus.
That's true.
Dear IDEOTV, hey, that's us. I was catching up on some old podcasts when your Casino Royale episode came up. I've always loved the Bond movies, partly because of how ridiculous they are, but I never actually read the books. I was surprised at how much an asshole James Bond is in the books, and I can't imagine anyone enjoying them. However, I do know one person who's actually read them. He's kind of a jerk, a misogynist, and fancies himself a suave and sophisticated man. It all makes sense now! It's like he was channeling Ian Fleming, James Bond, the whole time. On a more embarrassing note, I was listening to this episode while washing the dishes. You went to a break right as my wife came home. Unfortunately, your interstitial music played the phrase "asses everywhere" over and over again at a very high volume. Whoops! You try explaining to your significant other that you are listening to an amusing podcast about bad books and don't have some sort of weird music interest. Don't get rid of the weird and interesting music, but maybe next time, tone it down a notch. Yours in bad literature, Frank.
We're just doing our part to spread the gospel of Sissy Bounce. Big Frida is awesome, and I'm not going to apologize. Sorry. It says explicit on the little thing next to our thing. You know what you're getting into. I'm just saying. No, seriously, though. That not only is that a great song, that was actually a specific request from our guest, Lauren, who I agreed that would be an awesome song for a James Bond thing. But I think I did mix it a little too loud. I'll agree with that. I just got real hyped.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't blame us for getting worked up. Sometimes, after an hour of talking about botch, we just really need to get the beats super loud. So we've got a lot more mail. A lot has been coming in. Can't thank you enough for that. Mm-hmm. We love reading all of it, even if we don't get to read it all on the air. But this one deserves a little bit of special commendation, I think.
Okay.
It is entitled "Area Girl Doesn't Even," and it is from Courtney, no last name, and it goes a little something like this: Hi, hello. I bear the unfortunate distinction of being the only teenager to have read Ready Player One. It struck me as a sad book for old people whose experiences of joy ended in childhood. I remember the day I read it vividly because I hung out with a boy who told me he was disappointed to find out David Sedaris was straight. There's a lot in those sentences.
This is great.
Anyway, I'm writing in because I decided, per my mom's suggestion, to write one of my college essays on something that makes me laugh in 200 words or less.
Oh, no.
On, quote, that podcast about people not owning television.
Oh, no. I hope that this was the right decision.
Right. All 187 words or below. But if you decide the writing reflects badly on the show, you can pretend it doesn't exist if that makes you feel better.
Oh, man.
We will only do that if you get a letter that says you're not accepted and the podcast is why.
Yeah. We thought you were great, but then we listened to this podcast.
It's like, yeah, we cannot allow you to infect our college. And the essay goes like this. I listen to I Don't Even Own a Television almost every day. Surprising to most people, the podcast is A, not about cantankerous Luddites, and B, genuinely funny. Minor disagreement with A, but, thank you.
One of those words is accurate.
Listening to I Don't Even Own a Television feels like you just read a terrible book and discovered your nicest, funniest friend had read it at the same time. Hate watching and hate reading seems to have grown exponentially in the last few years, but this podcast doesn't take part of that movement. It criticizes books for laziness, for ludicrousness, for entitlement, but never comes across as mean-spirited. So back off, Neal.
Seriously.
There is a joy in reading something awful and discovering a world beautiful in its incomprehensibility. It's fun to listen to smart people who enjoy reading and talking about it. This past year, I've read a lot of James Franco's writing.
Oh, God.
The writing is undeniably bad, but also performative to the point that its awfulness seems intentional or at least self-aware. They are awful, but I also think about them much more than books I actually liked. Bad books can be entrancing and ambitious and utter failures. I love the podcast because it acknowledges that. So that's pretty cool. And James Franco, you say?
I'm suddenly my interest is piqued. Thank you. That's probably way more articulate than I could ever describe the reasoning behind us doing the podcast, but I feel like it's completely accurate. So thank you. And I sincerely hope that you haven't just blown your chances in higher education.
Yeah. Thank you for writing our iTunes show description, I guess.
Yeah. If the whole college thing doesn't work out, you can write the bio for our press kit. We're also going to have 2 or 3 pages where we're like standing around in like leather vests in front of some brick walls, like just flexing our muscles, and then maybe like a demo CD with some band on it that's not us.
Like holding the books upside down, and we hope you think that's a joke.
Yeah. No. Awesome. That was cool. Everybody at home, thank you for listening. Thanks once again to the people who voted on the AV Readers Club poll, because Geez, what an honor. That's friggin' awesome.
Yep.
So thanks again. If you want to get in touch with us, I don't even own a television at gmail.com. We're also on Twitter and Facebook at IDEOTVPod. You can find our Facebook group, the I Don't Even Own a Television Party Pit. It shouldn't be hard to find because it's horribly named.
Oh, come on. Everybody has a good time in the Fun Time Party Pit.
Here's the thing that happened, right? Like, spur of the moment, I'm like, I should make a page for the band. Or, not for the band, for the podcast. God, where's my mind stuck? Anyway, spur of the moment. I should make a group for the podcast. Oh, you have to give it a name? Cool. I can always change this later when people join.
Right.
Nope, you cannot change that. We could change the name, but
I
then the
see.
address would still be Party Pit. So enjoy the Party Pit, everybody. I hope that you're having a great time. Age appropriate, dancing far enough away from each other in front of chaperones at all times.
Yeah, a lot of hugging, a lot of surreptitious spiking of the punch, and recently a lot of really, really interesting conversations.
Yeah, seriously though, it's a really cool community. We're like really stoked that there are people like talking with each other about, things and doing it like kind of prompted by our show, which feels really weird and cool. So thank you.
Good books, bad books, stuff that's not even books, stuff that's not even good or bad. It'll blow your mind. You will, in fact, experience a snow crash.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. So on that note, probably time for us to go. So thank you again for listening. And until next time, keep reading crap. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Close your mouth except to say might get something happening. This season has a secret joy that some are missing. We could all find it if we just watch this song. Put your big bag book back in the drawer. Bring your mind and body back from the store. Get to know the people in your house.